I'm going to do a demonstration on how I'm painting these doors. To start off with, I spray painted the door solid flat black. So if you just lay those out on a piece of cardboard and if you spray paint them black, it's very easy and quick to do. If you don't have spray paint, just paint them solid black. If you take a look at the door, you'll notice there's a little section with bars in the window. That little window happens to be a 1/2 inch wide by a 1/4 inch tall. What I'm going to do here is create a mask so we can paint the door brown and protect the bars, and then we can paint the bars silver later. To do this, we're going to need some masking tape. This is the good quality type of masking tape, 2 inches wide. And what I will do here is to take a piece of it, and I'm just going to tear off a chunk about like that, and I'm going to set it down here, and I will cut out a small window that's a 1/2 inch wide by a 1/4 inch tall. Now this little wall block that I have, it's labeled letter I on the plans, and the top of this wall section happens to be 1/2 inch wide by a 1/4 inch tall. So I'm going to use it as a guide to cut out my window. So I'm going to flip it upside down on here, and I'm going to hold it down with one finger, and I'm going to attempt to cut around it with an X-Acto knife using my other hand, and pull this off here, and you can see I've got the little window here, and I'm going to put it right over top of it. Try to get it centered as best as you can to cover those bars right on the window, just like that. Now I'm going to dry brush this with a brown from the earth tone medium color. It's kind of a pumpkin pie color. You could really use any brown you want to dry brush the door, but I would suggest a medium to light brown in order to get it to come out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to dip my brush in this paint. You see this paint's kind of thick, and I'm just going to put it on a paper towel and brush most of it off onto the paper towel. And with the door, you don't have to really go crazy with getting all the paint off. Let's just see how this goes. So you see what I've done there. I'm just going to lightly brush across it. And it looks like I'm putting quite a bit of paint on there, probably a little more than I want to. So I'm going to brush a little more of this paint off. And let's try it again. That's a little better. So if you brush over it and just a little bit shows up, that's probably just about what you want. Because yeah, I think I can control this pretty well. And if you see, this really doesn't take too long. I'm kind of going horizontal across the door here, and I'm kind of going vertical on the bottom here, but just kind of paint all around. And you can see that with a little bit of dry brushing, the details pop out pretty nicely on here, and those bars under the window are protected. So you can kind of see what that looks like right there. Now with the dry brushing completed, I'm going to go ahead and remove this little mask that we have over the bars, and you can see the bars were pretty well protected. And then I'm going to take the other half of this mask that we have, and I'm going to center it over here and place it directly over the bars. So now the paint I'm going to dry brush the bars with is chainmail. This is from Citadel paints from Games Workshop, and I like Games Workshop's paints because the metallics really have a lot of metal in them. So I'm going to take a little bit of that metallic paint and dry brush most of it kind of off onto paper towel, and then we'll take this, what we have right here on the window, and we're going to very gently dry brush across going horizontal. So you want to really lightly hit it. So I'm just going to very lightly go across this way, and I can kind of go back the other way, and you can see that the bars really came out pretty nice there. So I'm going to flip it over. Since I cut 2 masks, I'll go ahead and do the other side of the door as well. Don't push too hard when you do it, or you'll get silver in between the bars as well. So you're going really lightly just to get the just the tops of the bars. Once you have that, we'll remove the mask and we'll see what we've got here. Okay, we'll take that off and that. So what we have is the door, and you can see the bars are nice and silver, and it's separated from the wood on both sides. And that will be the finished door. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and paint up these room pieces. The process is really the same that I've done for every other project that I've done, so there's nothing new here. If you've painted a project before, just skip past this video. There's really nothing new that you need to know on it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a Castle Gray Dark. This is made of 3 parts black, 1 part white, and 2 parts water. This is a flat latex house paint is what I've got on here. Basically slop it on, really get it down into the cracks. So I'm doing the inside edges of the walls really well, and I'm doing the top of the walls. Okay, I'm doing the other side here, and then we'll start in the middle here. We'll go ahead and just apply paint to the middle. If we get a little bit of excess paint on it, that's okay. It can kind of flow down into the cracks. Okay, now that the base coat is dry, we're going to apply our second coat of paint, which is a medium gray dry brush. This medium castle gray color is 2 parts black, 1 part white, and 1 part water, if you're using house paint. If you're using regular acrylic craft paint, then I wouldn't add the water to it. This second coat is really very simple. So what I will do here is dip it in the paint, and I'm going to paint most of it out. I've got kind of a wide, soft brush, and that's about all I'm going to do. I'm going to get most of the paint out of the brush, and then I'm just going to start painting it on the piece. Okay, I'm not going to be too awful careful with it. All I want to do is make sure that I do not get this paint deep down into the cracks. So I'm going to hit everything pretty heavy. This is going to be a fairly heavy dry brush. So you'll use up a bit of paint on it, and just completely go over it and make sure that you do not get paint down into the cracks. Use a medium amount of pressure and wipe most of the excess off of the brush before you do it. Be sure to get everywhere. Be sure to get the tops of it, get the outsides, and then let it dry. This coat should go really fairly quickly on all the pieces. Okay, our final dry brush color is 1 part black and 8 parts white. Don't mix up very much of this because you're not going to use up very much of this at all. This is a really light gray, and get yourself a nice, soft, wide brush for this. This dry brushing, you're going to have to be fairly careful with to make sure that it comes out the way you want. So here is where we're going to be really careful with it. I'm going to dip the brush in the paint here, and this you want to be sure that you get almost all of the paint out. You don't want to have hardly any paint left in the brush. And so what you want to do is, that's pretty good. It's not going to take a lot of paint for this. We just want to pick up the edges and the highlights. So I might kind of brush it on the bottom, and I'm seeing a little bit of it on the bottom here, kind of like that. That's almost a bit much. You see I'm getting kind of blobs right there. I'd rather it be a little bit lighter than that. But I think what we'll do is go ahead and start with that. So let's start with this side right here. So I'm just going to barely dry brush it, and you can kind of see that that's actually coming out. I'm seeing a little more detail kind of showing up, and that's really just about all you want there. So if it's working well there, let's go ahead and start with the middle. Now the floor tile is the one that you probably want to be the most careful with. So I'm just going to very gently go across the top. I don't want to hit it too hard. And as you can see, we're actually starting to bring out the detail in the floor. So just very lightly brush it. And this cracked floor number 203, you have to be really gentle with it to get it to come out right. So right about there looks pretty good. You can see how that floor kind of came out like that. And you can go a little bit harder when you go against the wall. So you can kind of see the detail starting to come out as we go against the walls here. Okay, so when we get done, the piece should look pretty good. Just check it over to make sure that you have all the sides of it. And that's the real quick and basic version of the dry brushing.